Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the next lesson in the Su-25 Cadet series. This time we're going to take a look at how to evade, in particular, SAM missiles, surface-to-air missiles, and this can also apply to air-to-air missile if a fighter fires a missile towards you. In the West, air-to-air missiles are designated as a, let's say, AIM-9. The AIM, Alpha India Mike, before the number 9 means air intercept missile. It is very important to note the word intercept. A missile does not fly towards you. It always flies toward a intercept point. If you play football and you have the ball and one of your buddies is on your left side, let's say, you want to kick the ball over to your buddy. You do not kick the ball directly over to your buddy. You kick the ball over to your body, but let's say 2, 3, 4 meters ahead of him. So when he keeps running and the ball is coming at the correct speed, they intercept at that point. The missile works in exactly the same way. When you kick your ball to your friend in a football match, you are actually using proportional navigation. If you stand in the football field and you get kicked a ball, it goes high, you look up in the air, you look at the ball, you can actually not see the ball move, but you can see it grows bigger and bigger and bigger. Your brain tells you, oh, it's moving and it's coming towards you because it grows bigger and bigger. That is also proportional navigation. You cannot see the ball move, but because you only can see the ball grow bigger and bigger, you know it's coming directly at you. If you could see the ball move slightly to one of either side, up and down, you know, whoops, I need to move until I can only see the ball grow bigger and bigger and bigger. That is how a missile also sees you. If the missile can see you move up, down, left and right, it knows I need to correct my course until I can only see the target grow bigger and bigger and bigger. When the target grows without visible movement, the missile knows it is heading directly towards a intercept point. It is heading directly to you without heading directly to you. It is heading towards a intercept point. In the left cartoon I have here, this is you flying in your Su-25 that way. A missile is being launched from the right and it's flying towards you. Or it is not flying towards you, it is flying towards an intercept point. That intercept point is this. How do you know that the missile is flying towards you, or you are the intended target and it's not just flying ahead of you? You have the missile launcher here, smoke plume goes up, most likely, and then it goes bigger and bigger and bigger. Because the smoke is growing bigger, the ball is growing bigger, you know it's coming directly at you. Sometimes the missile needs to correct a bit and you see it goes, smoke goes out to the side and then it grows bigger and bigger and bigger. That way it's coming towards you. Because as you know from football, if you look up and see the ball coming, it grows bigger. That means we are intercepting. I am in its way. So that is proportional navigation in normal language, as hopefully as simple explained as possible. It is a fancy word for a very advanced movement and action, but it is actually very easy. How can we use that to our advantage? Now we know how the missile moves. We know where it's going because since it is reacting to us, we have full control of where the missile goes. If we moved a bit up, the missile would move up. If we dived, the missile would dive. We have full control over the missile. The missile has absolutely no control over us. And don't forget that a missile has a rocket engine in it. And that means once the rocket engine is on, it cannot be turned off. It gives exceptionally high thrust and power when it's on, but you cannot turn it on and off. It is when it's on until the fuel is burned out. That means that the missile have plenty of energy as long as the rocket engine is firing. Once it's out of fuel, every movement it makes drains energy. You have practically infinite energy because as long as your engines are running, each movement you make costs energy, but you regain that energy because your engines are running. And because the missile is using proportional navigation, it tries to predict an intercept course. It always overreacts every single movement. If you move, let's say 5 degrees up, when the missile is here, it have a predict an intercept course right here. But to get up to that point, it may need to, instead of this intercept point, it may need to go 2 kilometers up in the air. So if you go 5 degrees up just for a few hundred meters, suddenly the missile needs to react, go 2 kilometers up in the air, then you roll inverted, and instead of going up, you're going down. Then not only does it need to go 2 kilometers down here to the new intercept point, it also needs to spend energy correcting for the previous one. So 2 kilometers here and 2 kilometers there. Suddenly it spent 6 kilometers, lots of energy that it can never ever get back. You have plenty of energy. You can do this all day. You have full control over the missile. Therefore, proportional navigation is the most efficient way of getting a missile to its target, but is also very predictable. So that is one way to use the missile's advantage to your advantage. Another way is that we are flying here straight and level. Suddenly this radar site picks us up, locks on us, and launches the missiles. You know that there is hilly terrain between you and the radar. You know a missile is in the air, and you know how it moves. Therefore, instead of a impact point or intercept point here, you can move this intercept point as you like. You have full control over that. You can say, nope, let's move the intercept point down here behind this mountain. The radar does not see a mountain, neither does the missile. So instead of an intercept point up here, by diving sharply and fast, you move the intercept point here. The slower you dive, the closer to you the intercept point is. The faster you are, the further away the intercept point is. Just like in the cannon gunnery lesson, the more wind from the side, the more you need to correct. The less wind, the more directly onto lined up you can be. This missile is actually you aiming your gun. So because of this pattern here, this sway, this curve, we also saw that in the cannon correction theory. So when you dive down, throttle up, the missile needs to fly to this intercept point down here. That means it will fly into the mountain and just explode. I do not know of any surface-to-air missile that is actually capable of flying towards the mountain and then around the natural obstacle, be that a forest, a mountain, a building, and then reacquire you and then follow you and kill you. I do not know of any surface-to-air missile that does that. Let me know if you know any of those. Be warned that many of the modern surface-to-air missiles, especially Russian surface-to-air missile, is capable of reacquiring you. If you go down behind the mountain, lose a lock, and then too early comes up. Many missiles now is able to reacquire you and go for you. So the time you spend down here and then go up, the missile will most likely be here. So when you put your head up here, suddenly it is within, let's say, a kilometer, and you get almost no warning. So stay down there for a few seconds, 5-10 seconds to be sure. Because the missile is flying so fast, the faster the missile flies from the launch to you, the shorter amount of time you need to be down here, because the faster it flies into the mountain. So once again, many people say, oh my god, it is a very big threat because it flies so fast. It is a threat. It is a disadvantage to the missile. It can be a advantage. It depends on how you look at it and how you counter it. So be careful with popping up too early. Also, one way to degrade the missile's ability to get a good solid lock on you and get a good solid intercept point on you is to using chaff. Chaff is at one time it was aluminum strips thrown into the air that reflected the energy, radar energy. The British call it the window, I believe. And a good way of describing that is, you see a person behind that window or behind a window that is open. You lock that window. No, let me rephrase that. You see a person behind a window that is open. You flashing at them with your flashlight, bringing light on them. You have a lock on them. Suddenly they drop chaff, i.e. they close that window. Now the only thing you see now is reflection from that window. You have a very hard time seeing the person behind that window. That is how I learned what chaff is and how it practically works. So to evade or degrade heat seekers, you need to use flares. Flares are just burning magnesium, aluminium, and I believe it's Teflon also. They're just like the flares we drop for illumination of the battlefield. Exactly the same thing, just smaller. So remember that flares has absolutely no effect whatsoever on radar guided missiles, and chaff has absolutely no effect whatsoever against heat seeking missile. Each threat has their counter. The best way is to avoid getting locked by the radar. The easiest way is to fly behind mountains very, very low, I mean 5, 10, 15 meters above the ground, behind buildings, forest, hills, and so on. If you cannot do that due to terrain or mission profile, there is something that is called nudging. If we look at the lower left window, nudging. Once again, many radars use a technology called pulse Doppler. That means it sends out a burst of energy, and that energy reflects off from you and it comes back. Now, because the radar get a return, it knows, whoops, something is out there. And if you're going towards the radar beam, that beam, when returning, accelerate with your speed. If your speed is 500 kilometers per hour, the radar return will be 500 kilometers per hour faster. Therefore, the radar knows, whoops, something is coming towards me, and is coming with 500 kilometers per hour. Also, when an object is moving towards the radar, when the energy hits, it compresses because it is getting pushed by the return object, you, and it also moves toward that object. So it gets compressed. So a compressed accelerated return tells the radar everything it needs to know. If the target is moved away, when the radar energy hits the target, it gets stretched out. Just like if you're doing the what is called stafette, it's called in Danish relay run. If the person you're getting the stick from in a relay race, if he is running towards you, suddenly you meet at a very high speed, and you do not need to reach out and grab that stick. If you are catching up to your body in that relay race, you are leaning out, you're reaching out to get that stick. That is practically what the radar does in a pulse Doppler. One way to avoid getting a solid return is, as I said, something called nudging. That means that if you're not moving towards the radar or away from the radar, yes, the radar may get a return, but there's no speed or compressibility change or compression change in the radar return, because you're flying completely level with the radar. The speed of the radar return does not change. Therefore, many radars does not see you. You are now in its blind spot. If you go searching for nudging radar on YouTube, there's many other people who is much better at explaining this than I am. It is a very used feature doing air-to-air combat. So go YouTubing that and you will get a much better explanation of that. But to recap, we now know how the missile or how the radar works, how you are spotted, how the missile flies from the launch until the intercept, how it thinks, how it moves, and therefore we can now degrade it. So if you put that all into practice, we will get some nice results. I have made this mission where we will put it into practice. We get a lock, and we're heading directly for the target. The target is 40 kilometers away. There is a launch. We roll over. We're heading towards the ground. We're popping flares. Whoops, one thing, I forgot that, sorry. The buttons you need for flare is countermeasures, chaff, dispense. Oh, sorry, I'm saying flares. I mean chaff. Countermeasures, chaff, dispense. Also, you have a button called continuously dispense. That means when you press that, each second, one flare, or is it two, and one chaff is deployed. That is very useful if you're coming in to an attack, you're diving in and you expect enemy air defenses, or when you're pulling out of a attack, you're pulling out with full throttle, therefore you are a huge target and you're slow, so you cannot maneuver that good against radar guided missile. That is a scenario to use continuously. And also we have flares. Remember that flares has no effect on radar guided, and chaff has no effect on heat seekers, on IR guided. We are throttling up, gaining speed, forcing the missile to spend its energy, using the terrain to our advantage. Flying as crazy as possible without hitting anything. And we may be in shading terrain now. Yes. Missile evaded. As you see here below me, we have a perfect terrain for losing SAMs. This terrain is absolutely gorgeous for that. Between us and the target, the SAM launcher, there is open terrain. Therefore, I would be very cautious about moving into that open terrain with those SAMs over there. Because in the flat terrain I have absolutely no or very degraded possibilities of evading a missile. So my opportunity here, or my option here, could be I'm just floating around out here, trying to bait the SAM launch. That's the launch, and then back into the valleys, into the mountains. And I'm diving steep angles to lure the missile down towards the ground as fast as possible and make as tight a turn as possible. Just this changes your course, and even something that looks like uncontrollable flying is useful against a missile, because it needs to react. It cannot just say, oh, he's just doing that for fun. It needs to react to every single movement you do. And when you are in this kind of terrain, you can save on your chaffs, because the terrain is helping you. In the open and flat, you need artificial countermeasures, or chaff and flares. So let's try that again. Let's go to a target. I want some altitude. We are locked 50 kilometers away. A launch is soon. Yes, launch at 49 kilometers. We now know that 49 kilometers is the launch range. That gives us an indication of what kind of missile it is. Because 49 kilometers is a pretty long range, even for a SAM. So stay here, stay down here as long as possible. Don't pop up immediately. So we now know that to be relatively safe, we need to maintain 49 kilometers to waypoint 2. So that is one way we can cheat them. Now they're just on the search radar. They are not blocking us. That could indicate that they were just rearming. We are now in the open. Let's try this. Now we need a bit more flares, and we should be heading directly toward or away from them. Steep angles, tight turns, very low altitude. Use roads, use just a tree, anything that helps you. If it helps, it helps. It doesn't matter if it looks stupid. If it helps, it helps. And tight turns to bleed off the missile's energy. Remember that the energy you lose during a turn, you can get that back through your engines. The missile cannot. And remember that some missile is lofting. That means they fly up and look down. That way they have a better time tracking you, even though you're behind obstacles. And we see a city down here. We're going to use that if they fire. Yes. Popping flares. Chaffs. Flying down through these buildings. And according to international law, this is legal. We are not using civilian as shields because a building is an object and not a human or animal. So as you see, the Su-25 may be a very old plane, but know your enemy, know their gear, know their technology, know their threat, and use to your advantage. But as you know, there are no guarantees. There are no guarantee that this technique works every single time. You could be unlucky and you could be lucky. You could be doing this without chaffs and it still works, and you could be just flying straight and level with chaff and it works. So it is a very interesting subject. And also you can use your RWR. If you take a look at this on your RWR, you see the light strip. Right now there is 2 unlit fields or spots. If there is a launch and you suddenly see that light strip getting closer towards you, you know that that is the missile. As soon as you see that light strip stop moving, you know that the missile is not gaining on you, but is still active but not gaining on you. So yeah. If we go in and take a look at IR guided, we need to get into the mission editor and delete that one, because that is the thread that is flying towards us or at us. At Kubernetes I have set up a Vulcan and a Stinger. That is the airport just ahead. When you assume there is a man-pad, man-portable air defense system, always keep your eyes on it, because you'll get no warning, because that is IR guided. but the way to evade them is exactly the same. You can see the Vulcan in the middle of the runway there. A Stinger flies pretty much the same as a radar guided one. I do not know if he is flying at me. But if you see the Vulcan or Silke or Tunguska or anything like that fire at you, as soon as you see the shot, change your flight path. And remember, not just in one axis, but always change your direction and altitude. So if he was flying at me now, I would go like this: direction and altitude, direction and altitude. If you only change your altitude, there is such a spread on AAA that it is possible that you get hit. And also if you only change your direction. So always change direction and altitude. But once again, there is no guarantee. I do not know if he was fired. His radar is not on. You've been hit by a medium range radar right now. But if a Stinger would be fired at me, I would just pop flares, many flares, and then do some kind of stupid movement, just like I did there. Many flares. Don't just one each second. So just don't. And when you see the missile change course, you know that you have evaded that missile. You can also evade the missile by going just deep down and hope. Not always does that work, but sometimes. But that is how you degrade the chance of being killed by a SAM. It is a pretty long session or lesson, but it's because you need to understand how the missile flies, because when you understand that, the missile is not that dangerous. If you never knew that the missile is actually intercepting you and not hunting or chasing you, the techniques you would use to evade it would be very different. So often knowledge does that something that seems very dangerous and perhaps unbeatable becomes a lesser threat and beatable. Simple knowledge.